Bay Radio International on a Wednesday. Every other Wednesday, we talk to the Alicante lawyers, Beatriz and Heredia. Antonio is with us today. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Yeah, nice to be here.
We were just in the midst of talking about elections and so on there, so we'll move away from that and come to talk about buying property in Spain. We'll look at some different types of sellers, which is quite an interesting subject a little bit later on. First of all, though, the webinar the other day was about a live housing auction in Spain. How straightforward is that then for an expat to get involved in?
Well, it's not the easiest process in the world, I have to say, because they are really not meant for them to be accessible. No one has bothered thinking, probably the public would like to get into that. And make it something easy, like bidding on eBay or something like that. No, it can be online. It can be also, in person, but plenty of them are online. So you can actually bid online if you want to. You have to be credited as a reasonable bidder, which is a process by itself. It can be a little bit complicated. But the main issue that I see with them is the property that you're going to get. Mm-hmm. The main pro is definitely the bargain. You can really get really good prices and there's really good deals in bidding, because bids are not based really on the price that the property has, but
it's what the bank needs to get back. Yeah,
that's exactly
what the bank's owed.
That's in fact the key of it. So in some cases, they are okay of getting a lower amount just because that's probably the only money that they're going to get out of the property. And in Spain, really, you cannot have, or it's not common to have court sales, as one would think. For example, let's imagine two people own a property. You and I have a property together, and we're really fighting about it. So you want to sell it, but I don't want to. So you cannot force me to sell it easily. Some courts will allow it, some won't. But if there's a disagreement, then it will go into a housing action in a public bidding. And therefore, you will get a fraction of the price. So it's not a popular amongst homeowners. But if you're a bargain hunter and you don't mind getting a property that maybe has some debt, or maybe the real estate of the property is not as good as you may expect, then yeah.
So I'm guessing that is what most of these properties are. They are properties where the people who own them owe that debt to the bank, and the bank's recovering.
Yes, most of the properties are like that, a repossession by banks. Also, a really good amount are developers that failed. So
of course, yes.
Right.
You see these almost finished buildings and so on, that sort of thing.
Yes, and those are normally probably the best deals, but also the riskiest. One thing is linked to the other, as you may imagine.
Yeah.
Because maybe not all the paperwork for the house is in. Maybe it's not fully registered as finished or at all, or it may have utilities or not.
Maybe some big bills behind the facade of an almost finished building.
That's right.
How do you get on top of knowing everything that's happening with the property? Is there a time frame from when they're put up for sale and the auction actually happening? Is it always a uniform sort of time period?
Ideally, but that's not how we...
You're going to say it's not.
No, there's not. There's absolutely not. Because that depends on the court. So, for example, any given court, let's say Denia number 1, for example, will always do it like in 3 months. So, they'll try to keep the pace. But maybe Denia number 2 doesn't do that, and they do it every 6 months or every year. Or, and Denia number 3, they do it whenever they see like it. They feel like it.
So where do you find out about these potential bargains?
Well, that's the key. You need to dive right in, get into the world of the bidding and the bargain hunting, and you try and score the websites for bidding every day to see if there's something that whets your appetite. And then once you know about the property, to try and do as much due diligence as you can before it comes into the bidding actually starts, because there's some time from the moment in which the bidding is announced and the actual bidding. Mm-hmm. So there's time to do some due diligence to try and avoid, deal breakers or really red flags. You're getting a deal, so you'll know we will have some problems. It's like a refrigerator that you buy refurbished.
Sure, you're taking a bit of a risk.
A little bit, but you have to measure the risk. So that's the key.
Okay. Is it easy then for say, expats to get involved in this? I mean, I'm guessing you're going to need some Spanish help here in the form of brokers and lawyers, yeah?
Yes, at least a lawyer. What can I say?
Of course you can, yes.
You'll need somebody trusty on your side to help you discriminate the grain with the real gold, to be able to find that diamond in the rough, that from the properties that you can see, that one that, well, really didn't look like that much to you, but the price was really good. But it turns out that really the depth is not that much. It's okay, just the water is disconnected, but the installation is proper, and it doesn't own any council tax. So, it's fine to buy.
So, of course, that can be the thing. If a property is being put up for sale by a bank because people have defaulted on the mortgage, say, it's likely they defaulted on other bills as well.
Of course, yes, of course. In the case of a repossession by defaulting of a mortgage, you can expect at least council tax to be owed, utilities with big debts or disconnected and with big debts, and so on and so forth. And maybe someone living there, like the owner?
Still.
Yeah, of course.
And right, okay, because again, that's another legal process that you have to get into then.
Yes.
If somebody's in the property and doesn't want to leave. But then again, would you want to buy something where somebody was still in it?
Yeah, it's not common that happens though, but it may happen.
Can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Normally there's a squatter. In our experience, they when they get wind that the property is for public auction, maybe they barricade to avoid, because while the property is in a limbo, if there's no harm, there's really no crime. Or what's the thinking or that they may have? There is, in fact, illegal still to squat on a property even if the ownership is dubious. But people may think that they will not be prosecuted for that, which in fact is true in some cases. But once it's clear that there's going to be new landlords, then these unwanted tenants will like to skip town.
Is there a website you can go to find out upcoming properties, perhaps, in that way?
Corporate court basis.
Really?
So it does. Yeah. So it does depend. But yeah, there is a place. I could suggest any of our listeners that are interested in it to do a little bit of a Google search, and I'm sure they'll find it.
Okay. And is it something that Pellicer and Heredia get involved in on a regular basis? This buying by auction?
Yes. In fact, there is not only that, but also hunting properties that are problematic because they have debt and buying the debt from the bank or from the whoever is having, and then trying to reconcile debt and ownership. For example, before a property gets into a public auction, they are normally, as we said, somebody that defaulted on a mortgage or in some debt, and there was a court process. That the last step is the owner is dispossessed on the property, and that one gets into this public auction that we're talking about. But before that, you can intervene the process, being in the court or not, and offer the creditor, to settle the debt for the debtor. So you buy the debt out, normally on cents on the pound, to say, so for a fraction of the cost. And then if you do that properly, you contact the owner and you tell them, well, how about you just leave? I'll pardon the debt for you, and you just leave the property, and we'll consider it even. So if you reach a deal and the property is in proper condition, then you got also a property for a fraction of the price.
Okay, so those things can happen, but as I mentioned, then you do need some help in settling those debts and getting everything done legally, because as we know, there can be loopholes, there can be difficulties.
Oh, yes, of course, particularly not in the case of the public bidding, not in ownership regard. So you become full owner of the property for sure. What you will have is maybe loose threads, so some points that were not correctly addressed, or really they were pending from the previous owners, and that you have now to tend, normally debts of the economic nature, or the house to be in a state of disrepair to some degree.
Yeah, or you want some work to be finished, for instance. Perhaps.
Of course. So though all that requires due diligence and inspection by an architect as well, in order for you to be sure that what you're getting is really a bargain for the price.
But you have to have that sort of the money available. I was going to say the cash in hand, but as you pointed out when we were talking about this, we're not talking about a suitcase full of money, but we're just talking about having the actual capital.
Yes, that's right, because on an auction you cannot get a mortgage on the property. you have to get all the kind of loan, or if not, you have to have the cash readily available.
All right. We'll talk a bit more because we heard quite a lot in the past about the bad bank, which is Sareb. We'll explain a little bit about that and talk about the properties that it may still have available, because it's another way, isn't it, of getting onto the market and perhaps picking up a bargain. Antonius here from Perthia and Heredia with us today, looking at auctions and for houses in Spain, but also now the Sareb, which was known as the bad bank following the financial crisis. But effectively, it holds quite a lot of properties, doesn't it? And the idea was that basically they were bought out, all of these banks. It was BFA Bankia, Catalonia Bank, Banco Gallego and Banco Valencia, wasn't it? And they're basically all the assets, the properties that were there that people had defaulted on and so on, were meant to be sold off to help the Spanish economy. At least that's the work that Sareb says that it's doing every day, to help strengthen the real estate and financial sector in Spain. And these auctions are continuing. They still seem to hold lots and lots of properties since 2012 when it was set up.
I think they even hold more than they did. Well, I don't know about that. But yeah, that's true. That's exactly what you said. That's exactly true. That's the origin of the Sareb, of the Banco Malo, or the bad bank. And the idea was for them to hold all these toxic assets, these properties that were really defaulted, and try to sell them at a price. Normally also a little bit of a bargain. You can really find
bargains, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it's quite related to what we were talking about. In order of risk and reward, probably the Sareb is on the mild side.
So less risk.
That's right, and less reward. The prices are normally good for Sareb properties, not for all of them, but you can still find good prices. Yeah, I had and this is a real example, I had a client buying a whole building in Moraida, 4 apartments and 4 parking spaces. Really prime real estate location. On the paperwork, all the properties were okay, so all the apartments were really good. They had almost no debt whatsoever, and the price was about 70-75% of the real price, so you still get
That's still a good bargain.
That's right, 25-30% discount on the price. They need a little bit of refurbishing, and then you could sell them, I think quite at a profit, which I think is the idea that the client had. So there's still good deals to be found by Sareb. The problem for expats is money laundering. So when you buy a property of a private citizen, for example, if you sell a property to me, or if you prefer to go the other way, if I sell a property to you, then in this case, my money laundering to you would be exactly this one. Do you have the money?
Yes.
Then perfect, the house is yours. And that's exactly how much money laundering a private citizen is required to do. But if the seller is not a private citizen, is a developer, or even more, it's Sareb, the amount of money laundering that they need to do is higher. There is a higher standard for them by law. That means that Sareb will have a special compliance department in which they will check on the financials of the potential buyer for them to accept the bid. So, for example, if you're buying a 200,000 euro apartment, for example, at Sareb, and then you'll pay a reservation of 3,000 euros, and they won't ask you to pay anything else until you go to the notary, so you won't pay the 10%. But they will not approve your bidding until you pass money laundering. If you are Spanish and you're buying with a mortgage, as most Spanish people do, passing money laundering is not really that difficult. Most of the money, 80% of it, will be provided by the bank, and normally the remaining 20%, you can argue that it's
all
for
accountable,
savings.
Basically, yeah.
It's easily accountable. You can really easily prove where the money comes from. Well, this is my renta, my tax declaration, and this is the money from the bank that I have pre-approved here, so that's how I'm going to pay for that. However, if you're an expat, maybe you are not buying with a mortgage and you're buying cash, and you got the money because, your dear aunt died and gives you a small portion on the inheritance. Also, you've got a pension from the state, or you've got a salary from a work that you're doing, but you had some shares that you sold. And with those 3 sources, you are financing the purchase. You are not going to pass money laundering with Sareb with that.
There's too many incalculables for them.
That's right. And the amount of documentation they're going to request from you is going to be, madness. Madness is the description.
However, we expect paperwork anyway, but
yeah, of course. That's right.
The
thing about this is that Sareb makes it so difficult sometimes provided that the buyer has the money and they have accepted the price, makes it difficult for the buyer to actually buy it because they make them jump through, over hurdles.
Yeah, but why would they do that? I mean, the job is to get rid of and sell off all of this property, surely.
Yeah, is it there? I think
I thought that's what it was meant to be there for.
That's meant to be there for. That's exactly. But that's not what they're here for. They're there to milk the state out of money.
They are meant to make more money for the state. That's right. It does say that at the beginning as well. It does tell you that.
Again, yeah, of course, that's the motto, I guess. But that's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Their business. They are not a real estate company. They are bankers. Trying to handle real estate. Anyway, so the money laundering prevention is quite a difficult hurdle to jump over. And you need let's say, an interpreter or a translator. In this case, let's be honest, a lawyer, to try and advise on the client on the best way to present the documentation and remind Sareb that other countries have other ways of earning money and having money that are perfectly legitimate, and it's not running guns or selling drugs in order to finance the purchase of a property. And with that, a little bit of pushing one way, pushing the other way, then you can pass money laundering sooner or later. In Pellicer and Heredia, particularly, well, not me, but also my colleagues, are quite experts on that.
You are the property expert, aren't you? Of course. But,
yeah. Sareb Whisperer, if you want.
There you are. Yeah, just a short check, though, on just the Valencian community in the Valencia area, 3,500 units for sale. That's just, properties that people can buy to live in. Lots of other types of property and even plots available.
All kinds.
Overall, there are quite a lot of properties involved in Sareb. So it is a way that you can possibly do it, as long as you don't seem to have, as you were saying, don't have lots of different income from lots of different areas that you're going to fund that property with, which is where Sareb's going to go, no, we don't like it. So up to about 41,000 properties for sale to live in available overall. And plenty of other options there, but certainly a way to invest as well, as long as you can prove that your money's not from a number of different areas.
Excellent, and also a good way to get a property, refurbish it, and sell it.
Indeed. That's Sareb, which is known as the bad bank, but basically where all of these properties that where money was owed were put to basically make money, I suppose, for Spain after the financial crisis. But there are still a lot of properties there, so another good way to go. Along with the auctions that we were talking about before. Now, Antonia, you came into the studio today talking about different types of sellers, the different types of people who you purchase property from. I hadn't really considered this as being something you could break down and say, okay, people want to move, they want to sell. But obviously, if you think about it, there are different reasons for people selling and different types of people selling.
Of course, and even some that are not even people, right?
Indeed.
Right, because you can have also
the bad bank.
The bad bank, that's right. Or a company to sell, or just a coalition of ownership, or the state of someone deceased. There's all kinds of sellers as well. And yes, it's worth exploring in this, our endeavor to fully explain how a conveyance works in Spain. I think that's quite an interesting topic. And the reason why I thought about this is precisely that this week, one of the new files that came into my desk had a contract signed by the sellers, 2 sellers, and then another 2 signing on representation of a third. So I requested from the agent, well, that's fine, that, you have somebody signing on behalf of somebody else. Provide me, please with the proof, the power of attorney. And say, no, it's the daughter, the one that's selling. It's like, anyway, still, if it's your daughter, the one that's selling, and you as the father, the mother, or the tutor, you are signing on behalf of them, you still need a power of attorney. No, it's an underage. And that's a different thing, you see. So that comes to the next point. Can an underage person own a property? Well, yeah, of course they can. Anyone can own a property. Even someone that has not really been born yet can own a property.
In name, I guess.
In name, obviously they cannot use it. They don't have a use for property yet. Yeah. Yes, they can own it in name because in Spain the law says that an underage person can have any rights that are beneficial to them. And owning a property, despite having to pay taxes, is still something that overall is beneficial. So yes, they can own it. What they cannot do is sell it freely. In order for an underage person to be able to sell a property, you need 2 things. First, permission from your parents or tutors, if you don't have them. And second, a court order, permission from the judge. And that's the key point. So in this file that I was talking about, the next thing I told the agent is like, perfect, I'm fine. You don't need a power of attorney to sign a contract on the name of your daughter or son.
Somebody has to have
That's
the power
right.
of attorney.
Of course, you don't need it in this case because they're underage and they cannot sign a power of attorney. Just with the family book or birth certificate to prove that's your daughter or your son, it's enough. But for the execution of the deal at the notary, I'll need a court order if they're Spanish. But if they're not Spanish, that's not the same rule applied to everyone.
Okay. Wow. Okay. They just got a little bit more difficult for expats.
You see? No, in fact, for an expat...
You're going to say it's easy?
It's easier.
No.
Just for this one time. So don't get cocky. But yeah.
I found something at last, didn't I?
Yeah. I had a file, this is also a good example, a couple of years ago, in which an expat, a British person, passed away. And he really didn't decide on who wanted who did he want to bequeath the property to, so he gave it to everyone, and there were 11 heirs, and amongst these 11 heirs there were 4 that were underage, and everyone was British, and they were in fact all of them living back in the UK. So obviously as soon as they inherit, the probate went through, what they wanted to do is sell the property. They didn't want to keep it. They just wanted the money, which I understand obviously, and to share the property with 11 people is a lot of people to share it with. Anyway, so because 4 of them were underage, in the UK, there is no need for a court order. So a parent can freely sell the property that belongs to the child under their own fatherhood claim, just because they are the father or the mother, they can just do it. So with a way simpler paperwork that we manage, without court involved, we manage to sell the property easily and successfully. So yes, at least in the case of British people, it's easier to sell a property if you're underage, because just with your parents involved, that's enough.
I said at the outset here, Antonio, I was just kind of thinking that generally it's the same kind of people that go through these sort of transactions every day. But obviously, when you think about it a little bit more, of course, it isn't it? So you get different scenarios and different situations when it comes to who you're buying property from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, as you said from the very beginning, when you think about different types of sellers, you just think of different type of people. Yeah. But, well, that's not what the point is about. It's like there are different situations and different nature to the person or entity that is selling the property to you. Not only the underage, which is probably the biggest example of different kind of seller that's only cured by age. The next type that's also rather common, it's a company. Of course, you may Sareb, for example.
Like you say, entity, yeah.
Yes, so technically not people, guess. Yeah. They are from a legal point of view, just for the sake of ownership and such. They have some rights. And the biggest point about a company is that when you do the due diligence, you not only need to do the due diligence on the property, but also on the company itself. Because when a company sells, the taxes that you pay and everything, that's exactly the same. That's related to the property, not to the company itself. But the very basic nature of the company makes it slightly different. For example, you have to make sure if the company, the asset that the company has is the main asset of the company, or if it's more than 25% of the overall assets.
I see.
Right. If that is the case, you need a special agreement by the company's board in order for them to be able to sell it for you, which comes to the next point. When you buy the property out of a private citizen, a normal person, like you or me, then when you sign a contract with them, you just need them, to present their ID or the passport, and then you'll know, of course, they appears on the paperwork, this is the guy. So this is Antonio, he signed the property to me, so it all tracks. But the company cannot go physically and sign anything. Somebody has to do it on their behalf. So they need to be authorized somehow in order to be able to do it. So you'll need to check the paperwork to make sure that the person that's signing the agreement on behalf of the company is the administrator of the company or someone with a power of attorney enough for to be able to do that. But also, if it's the administrator, if it needs permission from somebody else, and if it needs an agreement from the board in order to sell the company. So as you see, it makes it a little bit more difficult, not too much. Yeah, always more paperwork, one way or the other. But that's an extra layer of due diligence, particularly also not only to make sure that the company is actually selling the property to you because the person coming to sign on the company's behalf is authorized to do so, but also that the property is not affected by the company debts. So you need to check a little bit of history of the company at the Chamber of Commerce, the Registro Mercantil, in order to find out how the money situation is, if there's any debts, if there've been too many changes on the company's registry, and so on and so forth.
Of course, the horror behind that one could be that actually you might lose the property later because there are debts on it.
Or you cannot complete the purchase.
Yeah.
Or that the person that signed on behalf of the company really did not have the right to sign on behalf of the company. And
Of course,
they just
that never happens.
went away with the money. Well, it never happens to me, but
No.
I guess it does.
You're the property lawyer. That's why.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well,
But it's a possibility. These things, these are
do
things that
happen.
can happen. People do try that sort of thing.
it's not common, but it doesn't have to be common. You just have to catch it once, and it's going to be more than enough for you. So of course, that you have to be careful about it. So besides underage and companies, you can also have people that are not not full owners of the property. A normal person. That can be the simplest explanation. For example, somebody that owns the property alongside with somebody else.
Part ownership.
That's right. Two owners, like a married couple or two friends or whoever. In that case, obviously, you need the agreement and permission of both of them in order to be able to buy. So you have to be very careful when you sign the reservation. The reservation is presented, the contract is presented to you in which you make the payment, that you are in fact getting the permission from everyone that owns the property to sell it to you at the agreed price and with the agreed conditions. If not, if one of them goes on the back of the other and tries to sell it, they are not going to be able to do it because you need the permission of the notary. You need everybody to be there, everybody that owns the property to be there in order for you to be able to buy it. That, I know, it's a little bit like basic, but still
No, but
worth...
it sounds in the past like situations where people actually have tried to sell properties even though somebody else does actually own part of it.
That's right. Yes, it does happen. Not too often because normally
It's stopped these days more.
Yeah, I guess so, because even the very best of the basic agents will know. At least they'll check the deed or the nota simple and they'll know there's more than one owner. What you can have is a dead owner. So somebody that owns a property, all or part, and it's dead.
This can be a difficulty in Spain, I guess. We have this. That's not. I guess it's something for another day to talk about.
Yeah.
But it is a difficult situation, obviously. Then there.
Of course. What you can have is probably, let's imagine a married couple, one of them passed away and the other one says, well,
Exactly.
this guy's on the ditch, so let's get rid of the property. But the problem is, it's not that easy. You need to do the probate first. Even if the deceased didn't fully own the property and only had the right of use and enjoyment or other
But then the
provisions.
deceased's inheritors, I'm sure, would have to be involved if there are any. We're going to say it again, aren't we? It's more paperwork.
Yeah, more paperwork. Of course, as you said, this is a full topic. It's a full can of worms by itself and it would require a special program just for that.
Yeah.
But it's another example. So as you can see, when you look to buy a property, not only you have to look, that if you like it or not, of course, and if the price range is something that you think it's worth it and such, and the condition that the property is in, but also on the nature of the seller itself, something quite important to make sure that the person that wants to sell the property to you is able to do it and they're authorized and they don't require signing of anyone else. The last example big example that I want to give is the sole owner, the false sole owner. You look on the nota simple or the person that presents themselves is the sole owner of the property. Only they own the property. So far so good. And they want to sell it to you, so you're very glad about it, and they tell you they are American, they are from Texas, or they are from Washington, but the state, not DC. And you say, perfect, I have the money here, and I can pay it to you in euros, so it's going to be fine anyway. And then you go to a notary, and the notary says, I'm very sorry, but you need the signature of the wife or of the husband of this person in order for them to be able to sell the property to you. Or if they're Spanish, if the seller is a Spanish person, you will need it anyway. That is because one person can own a property just on their own, but still be bound by the marriage economical agreement that they have. This does not happen in the UK. So this can be...
I didn't realise there was that discrepancy.
That's right.
Yeah.
In the UK, when you get married, the assets are separate. So if you are married to somebody and you buy a property on your own using your own funds, it's just on your name, it's just yours to buy, sell, however you see fit. But this does not happen here in Spain with Spanish people. So for example, in my case, I'm married in gananciales, which is the default system. That means that everything that I'm buying, even if I only use my own funds, will be also owned by my wife. Not on the deed, but in order for me to be able to sell it, I will need my wife's permission.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he will be entitled to her share if she wants to or not. So it may not say so. It may not say so.
So maybe be one person on the paperwork, but that doesn't necessarily mean you only need one signature.
That's right. You have to make sure what kind of marriage agreement the seller has as well.
All the reason more for making sure that you have the right representation. And Antonio is one of the property experts, if not the main property expert.
There's more than one. There's more than me at Beth and Heredia.
There are more at Beth and Heredia. AlicanteLawyers.es if you're interested in anything we've been talking about today or anything to do with things legal in Spain. And we catch up every couple of weeks for a chat. And you'll find more on our YouTube channel and indeed on our Facebook page and our website. Thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you again. Take care.
Likewise.
Shame that the other guys went to Ibiza without you though, right?
Oh, yeah.